Okay, Sam, I think we're ready to start.
Great, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'd like to call today's meeting to order. It is currently, let me just check my time. It's currently 6:06. If we can start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And Chris, if I can ask you and your team to lead the Goethe Pledge.
Okay, Casey, can you do our English version?
As a citizen of the world, I will follow Goethe's circle of learning. Curiosity opens my mind, ideas lead to knowledge, responsible choices show respect, cooperation strengthens others, learners are courageous, empathy creates community.
And Biggie?
Als ein Bürger dieser Welt folge ich dem Kreis des Lernens. Neugierig, ideenreich, respektvoll, kooperativ, mutig, empathisch.
And Nazmia, would you do the Spanish version?
Como ciudadano del mundo, seguiré el círculo del aprendizaje, creatividad, ideas, respeto, colaboración, valor, empatía.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I'll proceed to a roll call. Yasir?
I'm here.
Frank?
Here.
Pete?
Here.
I'm here. And has Katrin joined us yet?
No, and I just got to think she is not able to join us, unfortunately.
All right. So let's move to the affirmation of board findings pursuant to Government Code Section 54953E. Chris?
Sure. We are still within the ability of us to do a meeting like this, which is done virtually. But I do want to point out that that may come to an end if the governor takes away the state of emergency, as he has indicated that he would at the end of February. So at this point, we expect for this meeting and for next meeting to remain virtual, as this is a nice, safe way for us to meet. That won't be an option if the emergency order is rescinded. So we can talk about some of the logistics at the very end of this meeting when we talk about calendar items, about what that might mean. So we'll wait till the end of the meeting for that. But this is up for approval so that we can hold this meeting virtually.
Thanks. Do we need to read out the text?
No, that's okay.
Okay. Does anyone move?
I'll move. I second.
Okay.
Frank?
I second.
Oh, great. Thanks. Seconded by Frank. Call for a roll. Yasir?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
I approve as well. We'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is the approval of agenda as presented. We do have a modification to the agenda that we'll be including in our vote. We are going to remove the closed session proposed for today's agenda off of today's meeting. We'll table that until the February meeting. I'll move the agenda with that modification as presented. Does anyone second?
I second.
Thanks, Frank. I'll call for roll. Yasir?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
And I approve as well. Now let's move to the next item, public comment on general items in the board's jurisdiction. Chris, if I can turn this to your team.
Sure. Casey, would you tell us the rules?
The public may comment on any item that is on the agenda or any other item that is in the board's jurisdiction. Members of the public who wish to comment during the board meeting may use the raise hand tool on the Zoom platform. Individual comments will be limited to 3 minutes, and the total time for this purpose shall not exceed 30 minutes per meeting. If an interpreter is needed for comments, they will be translated to English, and the time limit shall be 6 minutes. Individuals may speak 1 time per subject. The Board of Trustees reserves the right to mute or remove a member of the public if comments or actions disrupt the board meeting. Board members are prohibited from responding to or commenting on matters raised by the public that are not on the agenda.
Thanks. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak today?
I do not see any raised hands at this time.
Do you see?
Oh, there we go. Now we have one. Jenny, would you like to speak?
Yes. Hi. I'm here on behalf of Tim because he couldn't make it tonight. So I'm just kind of speaking out in terms of what he's been talking with you guys about in terms of the safety. I don't know if I'm assuming that's something that's going to be brought up in this meeting. So just on behalf of him, just saying that this is something that's very important to us. And that's kind of why I'm here, just to represent him.
Great. Thanks, Jenny. It is indeed on our agenda tonight, so you'll be
Okay.
able to report back to him for the action we take.
Okay, thanks.
Do we have any other members of the public who are here?
Not at this time. No other raised hands.
All right, with that, let's move to the consent agenda. There's one item on the consent agenda. It's the approval of the regular board meeting minutes of December 12th, 2022. Do I have someone to move?
I move.
Thanks, Frank. Let's call for a roll. Yasir,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
I approve as well. So moving on to the next item, we're going to items for discussion and action. The first agenda item here is the executive director report. Over to you, Chris.
Okay. My favorite time of the meeting, to hear myself talk. All right. Well, here we are in 2023, and as usual, we lead off these reports with something that's very important to us, which is enrollment. And happy to share that enrollment is moving upwards. So if you recall, when we shifted or adjusted our budget, we brought our budget base down to 391 students, and building ADA off that. We had, I think, 393 at that time, so we gave ourselves a little bit of leeway in case things went down, which is the usual thing that happens at over the winter break. That is a time where we typically lose some students. We also might gain some students, but usually it's a net loss at that time for enrollment. I'm happy to report that we currently have 403 students. And that is up from last month where we had 395. So that puts us in a good place in terms of that our budget is now built on 391, that we're looking to potentially be in the positive, and maybe quite a bit to the positive in terms of enrollment. This is always counterbalanced by actual attendance, ADA, and whether or not kids are absent, and whether or not we're able to recapture independent study. But this is a good place for us to be. The mid-year enrollment was in fact positive. We lost a few, but we gained more. And we've had really good participation in recent tours. Casey is generally our tour guide, and she's been working with lots of different families, and some of those families have opted to come in at mid-year, and so that's really a good indicator. To be specific, enrollment is showing right now that we have all class size averages at 20, between 20 and the one class that's over at 26. We try to shoot for 25. And that was a legacy from back at when they were in kindergarten, and much larger class. But overall, it gives us a good spot to be in, and hopefully we may even be gaining a couple more students as time moves forward. So this is a good spot to be in for enrollment and better than where we were even with last month. Keep in mind when we get to the finance section of the meeting that the finances that we'll be looking at are based on the end of November, so that this number doesn't equate there. But it will as those financials, as we catch up, as we get forward to those financials in the months to come. Second on my list is just a quick note about Prop 39. This is always high on our list in this time of year, and want to share that we provided over the break. We provided the January 2nd letter, which goes to the Prop 39 office, and it's basically saying why we disagree, that they disagree with us about our enrollment projections. We sent our enrollment projections in November 1st, December 1st. They said they didn't agree with them. So January 2nd, we send a letter that says, no, we disagree. And so it all comes down to the February 1st, we'll get a preliminary offer. That is not obviously a final offer, which comes in April, but the preliminary offer is coming. And our plan is to begin an alternative agreement process at that time, starting locally with the Marina Del Rey Middle School administration, and then working with District West. Although I understand there's a realignment of districts going on at the district, so I think we'll still be in District West, but I think they've dropped from 5 to 4 or something like that. I'm not sure exactly what they're doing. So that's Prop 39. Nothing really new or shifting from what we've done in the past several years, following the same game plan that we'd had in the past, and we'll see what we get on February 1. Third item, I wanted to give an update on our ELOP program, or Expanded Learning Opportunities. If you recall, we did approve a plan, and this is what we're doing beyond the school day and beyond the school year. We have requirements to expand the length of day and making sure that we offer a program 9 hours a day. And we're doing that in a combination with our after school care, Prolific Kids. But we also needed to expand the number of days that we are offering program of 9 hours. And so we entered into our first foray of that. Over the spring break, I'm sorry, over the winter break, and we had a camp. It was a 4-day camp in the final week, the third week of the break, and we had over 50 students who participated. So that was a nice number. We were projecting between 50 and 60, so it was exactly kind of where we thought we'd be. We had right at about 60 in signups, but not everybody came in after signing up. But we were pleased with ARC, the group that we coordinated with. It was our first experience with them, and I think we were overall pretty happy. Some things we're going to adjust and shift and know about as in continuing to work with them, but that's an important piece. We will be the bottom bullet there, spring break set for spring camp set for spring break. So we'll be using ARC again and plan to kind of use the same blueprint and plan. And go from there. And then we're going to see how this fits into our big picture as we plan for next year. A couple bullets I didn't hit. The top one, successful sports program in the fall. Really happy with how that worked out with flag football with the boys, and we had girls volleyball. We're preparing for the spring, which will include girls soccer and boys soccer, and there is boys volleyball that is available. We're going to try to get going in the spring also. So we are getting plans for that. We're just starting to recruit people for it. We did just before the vacation do a recruiting on sports, and now we're kind of hitting it hard to make sure we have numbers to be able to run the programs. But they really went well, and there was a real positive feel in the fall with regards to the sports programs. Couple other things related to after school and Prolific Kids. As it does say, we're coordinating with Prolific Kids, and we are adding the SEL piece is one of the important components of ELOP. The SEL is one of them, an academic piece of it is another, and a physical aspect is the third. And a place where we thought we really could add a little and augment was SEL offerings. And so we've talked with Chris Massey Rhodes, and she has some limited availability, but we were able to eke out some time on Mondays. So she's going to work with a group of kids and offer it to kids both kids who are in the Prolific Clubs Kids program, and also to anyone else who wants to do it. It'll be at no cost, and it's going to be a group. She's going to set up activities and a chance for kids to get together and talk and really have a connection that we have in the school, and trying to expand that or extend that into the aftercare program as well. And to do that as well, Miss Chris will be conducting monthly trainings for our SEL staff, for the Prolific Kids staff, and those trainings will be in SEL, and really trying to help explain how we work with kids through conflict and help them to figure out the best approaches, that they understand the language that we use in the classroom, to help kids to solve their problems, and that would then carry over into aftercare as well. So we're kind of all speaking the same language. So looking forward to that. And I'm going to pause there for a second. Are there any questions about enrollments, about the ELOP program, or about Prop 39? Open to questions.
Thanks, Chris. Yasir, do you have any questions?
I do not, but I'm fading fast, so I'm gonna drop off. I believe we still have quorum. And Chris, if something changes, just give me a call. I'll keep my phone right next to me. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Feel better.
Feel better.
Feel better.
Frank, do you have any questions? I see your hand up. One second. Let me move to Pete first. We'll come back to you. Pete, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I just had one question. So you mentioned that for the spring, you're going to have girls soccer and boys volleyball. Is that correct?
Yes.
It seems it would be good to have a second option for the girls as well. Then, I mean,
So,
it seems very Title 90 to be consistent.
yeah, the way it works out in the league we're in, where that Title IX balance comes out is actually, I shouldn't have said boys flag football, because that can be co-ed. We didn't have any girls that went out for it, but they are welcome to go out for flag football, and so that balances out the numbers. So really good point. And yes, we have to watch all our Title IX issues, but the way that their league has it set up, because there's girls volleyball in the fall, boys volleyball is in the spring.
All right, thanks.
Good catch.
Thanks. Frank, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't get off mute here. I don't know why. What was taught in the winter camp? Because it's an extended learning opportunity.
Sure. The academic program, they had some of the cyber instruction with robotics and that type of thing that was the academic. There was also some writing that they were doing. So it's not an intense catch up for people. Because it's totally off time, we wanted to make sure that this is fun and active, but that we're engaging our minds as well. So that's definitely a piece of it. When we get to extended days that we're going to do in June, it'll be a little different because we'll be doing our summer school, and we'll be specifically inviting students to for very specific academic support. But this is the academic type activities are also designed to be very engaging and very interesting to help kids want to come and be there for the 9 hours.
Okay, and then as a follow-up question, 2 follow-up questions on the SAL offering. What are the offerings there we're planning to do with the kids? Whole child, I get it, but what specific is it?
They started with it today with just kids who are already signed up in the program. We're talking about on Mondays with Miss Chris.
Yeah.
So she's did just like an art activity, but it was more the getting to know you piece of it. And then as the other groups come in, she's going to basically make kind of a conversation and starters of like, you know, how kids are feeling, how kids are how do they solve their own conflicts or problems, and those type of pieces that she'd be working on.
Right. So, and then the last comment, and maybe I'm interested to hear what Pete is saying. You know, isn't the nature of the extended learning opportunity program, you know, to eventually do some catch up with the nature or the genesis of the program? Can you shed some light on this, Pete? Maybe, sorry for calling you out on the spot there.
Sorry, I guess mute must be an issue today. It's certainly in the summer program. There really isn't much research on what happens over the shorter winter break, although it's certainly plausible. So I don't know specifically what a key aspect of that would be not only what it is you're doing in the summer, but how you get kids and invite kids to participate, and whether there's going to be any sort of screening to sort of get after kids who might benefit more, rather than just kind of opening it up in general, but having a more focused approach and contacting whatever channels you use to contact parents or send out notices that some kids might benefit more from these expanded learning opportunities.
Because I'm saying this because like usually the kids who go to office hours are the ones, you know, who are, you know, already good and they've tried to get better, you know, and so are we hitting the right target group? That was my question, my line of questioning leading up to.
Right. Well, no, I mean, I think that's exactly right. I mean, it's a little different for these kids because oftentimes kids whose parents, if they have 2 working parents, oftentimes they end up in these programs because it ends up as a de facto sort of babysitter, which is a good thing as well, because you can learn something at the same time. But then a lot of times you might also, I don't know what it is in Goethe specifically, but a lot of times these parents will go home to their home country and leave for the summer, in which case it's a double negative in the sense of they're not going to get the expanded learning opportunities, and they're not going to be exposed to English during that time either, which oftentimes sets them back a little bit as well.
Just to make a point, Frank, we definitely do with summer school, which we only started really doing this program 2 years ago. We do target and look for specific kids and encourage those families. And if we're able to couple that with extended care, that's even going to help all the more to get families there. And of course, these are at absolutely no cost for anyone with free and reduced lunch.
Thanks. I did have a question as well to follow up on Frank's line of questioning for the coordination with the aftercare program, other than the after school offering on Mondays. Is there overture to any specific students to help them get additional supports, and what additional supports are being offered through the aftercare program?
Right, currently, they have the same programs that they have available, which are designated times of homework help and support. We have not brought in a specific intervention into that. We do things in the daytime, in the school day, but we haven't brought that in after school. That is certainly a possibility as we build this out, but we're kind of just taking a step by step and seeing what we can build out. It's all new, and every bit of it is going to have to be looked at of, are we spending our money wisely? But you know, some of the things that we have looked at a little bit is also the potential for tutoring programs that are available, for instance, online. There are massive programs that are out there now that allow you to connect up with a live human on video, but you can get one-on-one tutoring. It's a cost, but that's a piece that we might eventually bring in. That would be something that we could coordinate that both at home or in an after-school type setting.
Thanks. And then just to confirm, for the homework help, any student who is on free or reduced lunch, they can access that during the aftercare at no cost.
Correct.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
All right.
And just for clarification on that, they had been doing some offering to families where finances were a struggle. They had been doing that already, but now we formalized it to the list of kids on free and reduced, and of course we keep that confidential at the office, but we are able to determine who would qualify, and yes, that now does qualify an extended day.
Great. All right, I think with that, we can move forward with the rest of your report. Thanks, Chris.
Okay. Just 2 quick slides, because I shared this with the board before, but I shared it as one big long list, and the board asked for breaking it down into 2 lists of local elementary schools and local middle schools. And how did we kind of fall in terms of, I was showing you at the time just CASP scores. But I added a few more bits of information that are now available through the dashboard. I added what percent of our students or percent of students are making progress as English learners. I also included data about chronic absenteeism. And I also put a percentage of socioeconomic level that you can see. So those across the top. And then finally, suspensions, which also is something that is listed on the dashboard. I put that in as well. The information that is here, if you recall, we listed this by the math CASP results. So percent met or exceeded is how we sorted this. But what it does, it gives you kind of an overview of where do we stand kind of locally on just you know, on all of these different areas, but these are ranked or listed by math CASP scores. The other thing that was asked about was, could we break it apart by 3rd through 5th grade as elementary and 6th through 8th grade as middle school? And the answer to that was Pete's question. And the answer to that is we can do it locally and internally, which we did, but for the purposes of this, we can't do it for all the other schools. So to keep this an apple, or as close as an apple to apple comparison, it's if they're a K-8 school and the 3rd through 8th graders participated, then those numbers are listed as 3rd through 8th grade. But just to give you an idea, our middle school students last year did a little better than our elementary school students in reading and a little worse in math. So it gives you an idea of where we're at specifically. But this is the local elementary schools, and this is the local middle schools. And so the schools that are K-8 actually at middle school level have a little rougher spot, because typically middle schools do a little worse overall than elementary schools do. And so the benefit, actually the benefit for the middle school level is it might improve it a little bit. At the elementary level, it might be a drop, but these are at least apples to apples information. And this leads to the next spot on my information is some pretty good news, that as a result of the information that's there in the dashboard and looking at all the information there from socioeconomic levels and kids served and how kids did overall, even in subgroups, that Goethe International Charter School was named a 2023 California Distinguished School. This is a big deal. We were named a distinguished school in 2014, and different process at that time where you applied. There is no application for this. They simply designate schools, which means it's a little more just look at the numbers, but it also, I think, benefits schools that maybe don't have as flowery writers or time to invest in people for writing the application. So I think this is a really, really good thing for us. We were one of 356 schools across the state. That's out of 5,650 elementary schools. So 356 is a pretty good spot to be in. There were 70 of those that came from LA County as a whole, and really only 9 schools from the Los Angeles Unified School District. And I want to share a little bit of information about this is the list of those schools that were listed. And you'll notice there were some schools on the previous list that might have had a higher score in one area or another. They may have had problems in some of the subgroups and not qualified. They may not have had tested all the kids that they were supposed to in all of the subgroups as well as overall. You have to keep a 95% number of kids tested. So there's a lot of different factors that go into this, but the fact that we are one of the 9 in LA Unified is a pretty exciting place to be. Of those 9, there were 4 independent charters like us. There were also 2 affiliated charters, which means that they are connected with LA Unified beyond just authorization. And the 2 affiliated charters, there were also 2 magnet schools, and then there was one that we would just call a district school that was neither a magnet nor an affiliated charter nor an independent charter. Of those 9 schools, 2 of them were IB schools. That would be Goethe and Granada Hills Magnet, which is a very large program that is actually a K-12 program out in the and I think, oh, I'm sorry, that's a mistake. Granada Hills, I'm sorry, it's not Granada Hills Magnet. Didn't look right. Granada Hills Charter. So the 2 schools that are IB are Goethe and Granada Hills Charter. There are 2 dual immersion schools. That's Goethe, obviously German, and then Richland Avenue, which has French. And Richland Avenue, by the way, is the 1 district school. So even though they aren't a magnet school, they do have a very specialized program in French immersion. There are 4 independent the 4 independent charters have among the highest percentages of socioeconomically disadvantaged, and interestingly, the affiliated charters have the lowest. Just to give you an idea of what those numbers are. This shows the same list, but it also shows whether they're independent, and the percentage there is the low socioeconomic level, what percent is at each school. So one outlier is the Renaissance Arts Academy, is an independent charter, a really high number at 67%, and still managed to do quite well. And that's really, really something. But you can see the independent charters are among the top. And it's the two affiliated charters with LA Unified that are actually socioeconomically have the least percentage of students. So congratulations to Team Goethe. Really think it starts with the board. It works its way down through administration and through our teaching staff and our instructional aid staff. And I really believe it's in the classroom where what has made the difference. Sticking with our IB program, I think, is at the heart of what makes a difference for us, and the benefits that come from a two-way immersion program. So with that, quick questions or any thoughts from the board?
First, just a really big congratulations to you guys for seeing it through and getting this achievement. It's really impressive. Frank?
Yeah, same story from my side. Congratulations. But again, me being the pusher, how do we get to the top of the list? What's our strategy to go there? And I'm serious about it, right? And I think it's a massive marketing opportunity for us here to really tell the story. Especially there's one observation that our math program really seemed to be coming up. My kids graduating from the school, they really had deficits in the math, and they were good on English language learners. And now it seemed to be reversing a little bit. It would be interesting to do a little bit of a deeper analysis and see what kind of a good job we do with socioeconomic students in order to bring them up here, right? So because there is a deeper underlying current here. Playa Vista, which is probably our next competitor here, and Braddock's Elementary. How do we stack up against them and do a deeper dive here? That's just a comment. I think we have room to grow to the top, because that should be our aspiration. Thank you.
Thanks. Pete?
Yeah, I guess I had one. I'm just curious whether, since we had an increase in student enrollment, did that occur after this was announced?
No, but I don't think it hurt. once they, it was like in they'd already contacted us, but no, the increased enrollment was already kind of moving up, and I think. Frank's right on this. This is really an opportunity for us to put this front and center on all of our promotional pieces, and we've already moved in that direction. It's already out on our, in our website. We put it out in social media. There's been things out, a variety of different places, articles that happen. It was put out by LA Unified, but not with too much fanfare. It was also put out by LA County schools, and local papers have picked it up. The LA Times did not do a major story on this, which is interesting. I've not seen the LA Times push this, and I don't know what's behind that, but we are really gonna push that forward. So thanks, Pete.
Maybe you should reach out to what's his name, David Bloom, who writes for the LA Times, and say, hey, why don't you come by?
We did reach out to CCSA about trying to make this an issue, and they put out their own press release, which then got picked up a variety of places. So, but not LA Times.
Thanks. And I agree. This is a really big opportunity to try to keep interests up and, as we're facing the lottery coming up and making sure people are really keeping us on their radar. And then just a follow-up question as well, what do you have a plan other than keeping on doing what you're doing to see if we can achieve this goal for next year as well?
Yeah, I think it's really important. I mean, for this particular goal, it's related mostly to test scores. And so it's a lot of continuing what we're doing with iReady, and to really be prepared this year, and and make sure we do not have a COVID outbreak when we're doing the testing like we did last May. So I think we got over the hump of not having taken the test for a couple of years, and that was a big issue. And kids still did pretty good, but to Frank's point, I think we can do better. So yes, it's a little bit of doing what we think was working most from last year, but fine tuning it even more so.
Thanks. And again, congratulations. It was such great news to see. Do you want to continue on with your fundraising update?
Sure. This will be real quick. And that's it, because the last two slides after that will come up later in the agenda. I just wanted to give a mid-year review about fundraising and to give you a sense of where we're at. And there's two slides here. This is where we're at with things that would have happened by this time this year. And they are not complete amounts for this year, because in many of the cases, we continue to get funding that comes in. I'll give you an example. The annual giving, we have funding that comes in every month because people have set up their donations that way. So we expect somewhere around $15,000 to come in between now and the end of the year automatically just on annual giving. So whereas we're already 6,000 to the good compared with last year, on that top line all the way over where the delta is, you can see that that's going to go even further. So overall, where we stand, you can see matching donations. We still receive those. We did a little worse in Jogathon. We have which was just a few $1,000s off of where we were the previous year, which was our highest ever. Shop for Goethe, Eat for Goethe, those are ongoing, and they're already at a good pace for where they're at this year. So we expect those to be about similar to last year. We did better on house shirts. Goethe cafes, we've had different ones, but several of those cafes have been designated into a field trip fund for both the 5th grade and 8th grade major field trips. So that those don't show up in this spot. We also got a German consulate grant, as we have each year. Unfortunately, the exchange rates weren't as good this year. So it doesn't mean anything in terms of that they were giving us less money. It's that bad exchange rates left it, instead of 17,000, 14,000 out of a 15,000 euro donation. So we're in a good spot with fundraising, and let's look to the rest of the year. And where we stand is that we have a couple things that we're expecting of funding to come in. Yearbooks, money comes in on that. For income, we also have a parent night out that we're planning. Haven't done one of those in several years, so we don't see those in previous years. But most importantly, the gala. So we haven't had a gala the last 2 years, but we've done something in each of those years. During 2021, we did the special spring giving. So we created a spring giving that was just another ask, and we got 21,665 on that. Last year, if you recall, we did the spring soiree, and that was we got 35,000 that came in for that. So that was nice, but there were costs associated with that. Just as there are costs associated with the gala, all the expenditures are budgeted. So they're not, this is just how much money's coming in, but any expenditures that we do are already in our budget. And so we won't exceed what expenditures are there. And so we fully expect that with a gala that does similar to how the spring soiree did last year, and we think it's going to do better. But even with that, we will absolutely hit our budgeted mark for fundraising this year. So we think this year is going to be to the good in terms of fundraising, and we're cautiously optimistic because the rest of the year is there, and the gala is the big piece left. But to be at this spot right now, a really good place to be with regard to fundraising. And I want to point out the person who's been behind it. That is Biggie. I really want to thank Biggie for the work that she's done. I delegated this as an important piece of things that we need is internal fundraising, and she's really come through, and in particular with the annual giving, and took a little bit of a different approach this year. Biggie, do you want to add anything just about fundraising so far this year and how it's going?
Not much to add. You really summarized it well. The gala is right now our big focus, and we're hopeful that you'll all attend the event, and it'll be again like it was in previous years, a real gala with a sit-down dinner and a silent auction, not the smaller approach that we took, or the more conservative approach that we took with the spring soiree, and having it in a little bit of a reduced setting. So the gala will hopefully get us to a good point so that we can exceed the fundraising goal or the fundraising target that is in the budget. But I'm really happy with how it's going, and especially also with the annual giving. That's one of the highest amounts that we've had so far in all the years, that we will be over 200,000 just from our parents. So yeah, I'm very excited and very happy that we're at the point where we are.
Okay, and with that, I will close out my ED report.
Great. Thanks. Frank, do you have any further questions to Chris on the fundraising report or anything else?
Nope.
Pete?
Nope.
Great, neither do I. So thanks again, Chris, for the report, and thanks for your team for all your work. Let's move to the Finance Committee report. I'll turn it back to you, Chris.
Okay, let's look at financials. And do we have Ryan off from his day off?
I'm here.
Thank you, Ryan. So much for a day off, right? Let's see. I'm going to make this just a little bigger if I can. No. Okay. There we go. All right, Ryan, you want to go ahead?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Tonight we're looking at our financials as of November 2020, 2022. And I just wanted to start off with an enrollment update. And this is for enrollment through month 4, which signifies our period 1 attendance information, which was submitted to LAUSD, and it dictates our funding for the next for the remainder of this school year. So we are enrolled at 393 students at the end of month 4, and we achieved the 95% average daily attendance that we revised the budget down to. We originally budgeted for a 96%, but we had revised that down for our financial projections. And it looks like we're coming in on track with a 95% average daily attendance. However, because we had a couple more students than what we lowered our forecast down, we lowered it down to 391 based on our shortfall in enrollment for this year. We actually came in a little bit higher than expected for financials at this time, still less than our budgeted because we're under enrolled by about 35 kids. But based on the conservative projection down, we came right in just about where we thought we would be at this point in time. Moving on to the income statement portion. There was not a lot of revenue changes from the last presentation till now. Everything is coming in as expected. But just to recap, there were some big revenue changes from the start of this year. Despite being under enrolled by 35 kids and taking a large revenue loss from the lower average daily attendance, we aren't in that bad of a place due to the LCFF funding coming in at a higher rate than we originally budgeted for. So that offset the lower enrollment. And additionally, we received $290,000. We didn't receive it yet, but we will be receiving $290,000 of one-time revenue to offset what's called hold harmless in response to the lower average daily attendance rate in the 21-22 school year that was caused by COVID-19 related absences and absences due to lower than normal rates, and the state had granted that hold harmless for charter schools for 21-22. And this $290,000 is the portion that we couldn't accrue for last year, but is the amount that will be able to be realized for the 22-23 school year. So that's where you see all of the state revenue, this additional state revenue. I had said 290, but you can see that we're coming in higher by about 468. And that's because in addition to hold harmless, which is a one-time funding source, we also were awarded the Arts and Music Block Grant, and I believe we have a plan for board approval here tonight, as well as the Learning Recovery Block Grant. Also, to help support our efforts as we come out of distance learning and to address learning loss amongst the schools. And Dr. Jones, if you're in control, would you mind scrolling up just a little bit back to the top? Just to summarize, these are the Learning Recovery Block Grant and the Arts and Music Block Grant. Those are dollars that can be spread over the next few years. As of right now, our financials only have a portion of those in our model. We have 35,000 planned so far for Learning Recovery Block Grant, and that is a total award of 245K, but we're only looking to access about 35,000 this school year. And then the Arts and Music Block Grant, it's about $343,000, and we're looking at a planned amount of about 140,000 when we put these financials in. But Dr. Jones has a more specific plan that will be presented, so it could be a different number based on that plan for this year, right, Dr. Jones?
Yeah, one thing I want to share, and I remember you had said something about this at the finance committee. I think those two numbers are reversed. That the larger number is the Learning Recovery Block Grant, and the smaller number is the Arts and Music Grant. And I think if we can get that verified, I want to be sure of that before we approve the arts grant.
Okay, give me 1 second. Yes, you're right. Arts and Music Block Grant was $35,000. Learning Recovery Block Grant is $140 for this school year.
Yeah. And the overall, yeah, okay. That's all good.
Okay. All right. On the expense side, if you stay right there, we are coming in slightly higher than budget for the year, about $23,000. However, we have variance categories that I just wanted to address and remind everyone of. They're not very different from the last presentation, but I feel like we haven't talked about it in some time since the holidays. So we continue to see realized salaries from our certificated salaries due to open positions. And we look like we're going to realize about 39,000 in savings in that category for the year. But I believe we'll start to see an increased expense in that category going forward. But we did realize savings so far this year. On the benefit side, we're coming in about $62,000 lower in benefits, and that is also realized savings for the year so far. On the student supply side, we have about $55,000 less in planned expenditures. The main reason for that is $60,000 was budgeted for the school nutrition program. That's how much we have to pay to serve meals on campus. And LAUSD, they are not charging us anything this year. So that entire expense under student supplies was removed. So that's why we're seeing about $55,000 in savings in student supplies for the year. It's not that we're not buying student materials in the classroom and things like that. It's we're fortunate enough to not have to pay for meals this school year, even though we budgeted for it. On the operating expense side, that's the biggest number, $173,000 higher in expenses there. That's because we included an estimate for Prop 39 over allocation, that over allocation rent payment for the 22-23 school year. I believe it's about $140K that we're estimating for this school year. And we're also seeing an increased need for outsourced contracted substitute teachers this year. And it looks like that was coming in about $30,000 higher for the year than budgeted. All in all, we're looking at net income of about $296,000 for the year. And I believe that is what we're striving for. And it's also about the amount of the hold harmless that we were awarded this year, $290,000. And I believe the intent is to put that money back in the reserves because we lost out on it in the 21-22 school year. And we're trying to replenish that. So it looks like we will be seeing a very healthy net income from now until the end of the school year.
And if I could just interject, keeping in mind also that this is not reflective of what we've seen recently, which is an increase in enrollment. And I don't know if you saw that number earlier on, Ryan, but we're at 403 as our current enrollment.
Yeah. Very nice. On balance sheet side, just real quick, Dr. Jones, if you scroll back up, I just wanted to point out to the board that we ended the month of November with about $2.1 million in the bank. And I wanted to point that out because we're forecasting a cash balance of about 1.5 million at year end. And that's a lot of money that's just not going to be there. And I wanted to point out that we have a very large $1 million receivable at year end. And part of that $1 million receivable is a lot of this one-time funding because the timing of it is not promised. We know that of the hold harmless money, we're going to start to see that trickle in starting next month. But to be conservative for cash, we didn't want to over anticipate the timing of when these one-time funds were coming in. So the majority of that is part of our accrual. And as it comes in, we're going to realize the higher cash balances. But just to be conservative, we wanted to put, a more modest cash balance at year end, because that's not something that we can control. But it's not lost cash. It's not lost money. It's just a much larger accrual at year end that we're anticipating. Okay, if you keep going, we do have our notes here that summarizes what I spoke about. And then also in this packet is the actual income statement and balance sheets that were summarized in the dashboard. And the last page of the presentation is the check register for the month of November. that has been sorted by the largest payment down to the smallest payment. And it was reviewed in detail at the finance committee meeting. One of the charges is the credit card, which was a $1,900 payment for the month of November. And during the finance committee meeting, the actual credit card statement was reviewed and looked at line by line to review the charges. And I just wanted to point that out to everyone because that detailed discussion did occur at the finance committee meeting. But if anyone has a question about any of these disbursements, you're more than welcome to ask now or even later if you wanted to, if you walked away and had a question about something on here. We're more than happy to answer that now or whenever is convenient.
Thanks, Ryan. Frank, did you have any questions?
No, we reviewed everything in the finance committee meeting, and everything is good. Just a comment, there is, if it wasn't for the hold harmless, right, and the of 290, what Ryan mentioned there, and the not paying for food, it would have been a different picture. The other 600,000 or 700,000 which are coming in, they're being special purposed for certain elements, and they're being dispersed over the 3 years. So I wouldn't call that a structural deficit. But as you can see, enrollment is king, right? So we need to, that's what drives the revenue for the most part. And this year we're getting a buy, so to speak, right? As I might say. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Frank. Pete?
Nothing for me.
And I don't have any further questions on this either. I appreciate the perspective and the work you do on this from the finance committee side, Pete, or Frank, sorry about that. So with that, we need to move to accept the financial report. Is that?
Yep.
And then just to confirm, the finance report will have those numbers that were at the top reversed to reflect the appropriate notes between the block grant.
Yeah, we'll update that so that it's in our records the way, but we'll mention it in the minutes so that it's reflected of what you guys talked about.
Great, thank you. Would anyone like to move the approval of the financials for November 2022?
I move.
Great. Would anyone like to second?
I'll second.
Thanks. I'll take roll. Frank?
Aye.
Pete?
Yes.
I approve as well. Let's move to the next part of the discussion. It's the discussion of the governor's January budget proposal.
Okay. I'll start it on this, and then Ryan, if you want to chime in at any point, please do. The big picture of the budget each year is that it's a cycle that begins in January, and it begins with what is called the governor's proposal, and his budget proposal in January is a blueprint. It's a guidepost of where they think things will be come June when they have to pass a budget, or they're supposed to pass a budget. It gives an indication of where things are at, and across the state, things are not like they were a year ago. In fact, the Legislative Analyst Office was projecting at is projecting a $24 billion reduction. The governor in putting this together, he accepted the number $22.5 billion deficit compared to last year. So he's got to figure out who gets money and who doesn't. Well, the good news is the who gets money is education. He's not dramatically cutting education, and I'll go into a little bit more detail with the caveat, this is January, and where I'm reading a lot of different things about his proposal, and the critique on it is that it's far too rosy of a picture when there's the potential of economic downturn ahead. And so with that in mind, let's see what the governor had to say. First of all, that we're using the Prop 98 guarantee, which makes sure that a certain percentage or amount is going to education out of the overall California budget. But he is doing that and offering this budget without going into the rainy day fund. And if you recall, the rainy day fund is the where we've collected $8.5 billion to help with a soft landing in case of an economic difficulty. Well, 22.5 billion is quite a big difficulty, but he's not going into the rainy day fund to try to solve it. So for us, the most important thing is the local control funding formula, which includes or can include each year a cost of living adjustment, COLA. If you recall, last year we were planning on a 6% COLA. This year, and it eventually increased greatly, almost to 13%. When the actual budget was finalized. I do not expect to see that happen again this year. In fact, I think this may be a very aggressive COLA to be projecting. My guess is it's going to go down. The question is how much. But at this point, 8.13 is listed there. So the governor is saying, education, I'm not going to gut it. So that's an important thing to know. That's a big COLA. If we were able to do that, if that came through, I think we would be able to help move forward on our things like our salary scale and things that we're trying to catch up on overall. So we'll keep a close eye on this, but that's one of the most important numbers. The COLA is also going to work for outside programs for us. That includes nutrition, as well as special education. So the COLA at this point is applied to that. This LCFF equity multiplier, that won't affect us. We don't have enough kids who qualify for free and reduced lunch. Again, the accountability one doesn't hit us. The one below that, arts, music, instructional materials, discretionary block grant, that does affect us. What he's saying is he's going to reduce the amount by about a third of the budget or of what he's put out for that program overall, which is a multi-year program. So the likelihood that in this coming June's budget, we see a decrease, and right now he's suggesting that decrease from 3.5 to 2.3 billion, that is a part of that program. Interestingly enough, we have that for approval on our agenda today. Keep in mind that nothing is final about a January proposal. It's just that, a proposal. But we need to be thinking about what does this mean maybe in future years of how we spend that money. So we'll look at that piece later. But I can see the reason why, I think the reason why he did it and saw this as an area to potentially cut is right below it is Prop 28. And again, if you recall in the election, Prop 28 was Arts and Music Education in Public Schools initiative that was approved by voters. So there is $946 million of new money that is coming in through Prop 28. And I think that's one of the reasons why he's maybe taking away some from here. So we'll see how that plays out. Let's keep an eye on it. No reaction, nothing we need to do right now, but we just need to be aware of it. The other thing he's continuing forward, which is a big cost item, is his push toward expansion of TK and changing the dates in which the state will pay for TK students. If you recall, we had initially TK, the date for kindergarten was September 2nd when they created or December 2nd. As they moved it back to September 2nd, they added that whole window into what's called transitional kindergarten, and that group of kids who are 4 but not yet 5 can join in TK. Well, that number was moved to February this year, the date, and next year it's going to be April 1st statewide, and so that's it's a big cost because that's more kids in the system. So he's saying he is going to continue to support that. Again, we'll see if there's any changes of that come the May revise, but that's where we stand. He's also standing behind preschool, although we don't get those funds. Special education, as we said, gets the COLA. So that's important, and that definitely affects us. Cost factor of money comes in for that. There's some other programs, a literacy program, arts and cultural enrichment, opioids and fentanyl. There's some money for that. The school facilities, they're putting suggesting 100 million into the general fund. That's for school districts. But down here, charter school facilities also are getting 30 million. Those are small numbers. When we're talking about facilities, those are pretty small numbers, but they're doing something to try to move forward on facilities. The other things that are listed here, delayed preschool, that really doesn't affect us. Dishwasher grants and K-12 high-speed network, we already have a strong network. So those aren't things that are going to affect us, but those things that I did highlight, I think are pretty important and may have an effect. And I just wanted to ask Ryan if you had any other perspectives on the January proposal that you've heard through the XED world.
Nothing to share yet, but I know we're working on a summary of our own to push out to you, Dr. Jones, and to the other clients. I think you did a good job summarizing this far.
All right. And this was just for information. So if there are any questions, it's there, but there's no vote that needs to go on. Just want to be sure everybody's up to date.
Thanks. Frank, any questions at this point?
No, just a comment. Our the COLA and the step in column. Our step in column automatically that opens up a spread, so we can do something for our teachers. To catch up on pay, on teacher retention, because step in column is 2.9 every year. And COLA is what, 8% or so? Did you say 8 or 9?
Yeah, it was 8 point.
Almost 8. So yeah, not saying that but it gives us an opportunity to do either some one-time or to do some strategic, because COLA will come through every year, and COLA has never been lower than 2.9, right, Dr. Jones?
Yes. Oh yes.
It has?
Yeah.
It has.
There's even been negative COLAs.
Okay, there have been
So
negative COLAs.
it can happen. So
It
that's
can
what I'm
happen.
saying. Let's not spend anything right now. Let's just wait and watch and see what's happening.
Wait and watch, but there's opportunity for us to do something for teacher retention. Money matters. And as a matter of fact, Dr. Jones, are you attending this seminar for the Charter School Capital?
Yes, I will be going up to the CCSA conference.
Yes. Okay. Perfect. That's all there is.
Great. Thanks. Pete, any questions?
No, nothing.
None for me either at this point. I look forward to see how this winds up into an official budget and how it rolls in. So keep us apprised. Let's move to the next item, which is the approval of the campus safety recommendations. Should we move this first and then open discussion, Chris?
Yep.
Great. Would anyone like to move the
I
approval?
move.
Thanks,
I move.
Frank. A second?
Second. No, okay.
I'll second. All right, over to you, Chris.
Okay. If last month in December, we shared some information with the board. We had developed a committee, school safety committee, and as the ED, I ran this committee. So it wasn't a board committee; it was an executive directors committee, and we looking at the issues that we're facing and the problems that we face around the country and locally with things as horrible as school shootings or other shootings that happen, as we saw over the weekend in Los Angeles. That it's something that we need to be aware of and take seriously and come up with plans and do the best that we can. We realize that in case of a determined person with a weapon, that's going to be very difficult to stop someone. However, what kind of barriers are there, or what kind of ways in which we can alert for safety are some of the pieces that are there. So it's a serious thing we've been talking about, and we were very we listened very closely to what the board said last month, and really took to heart what the comment about not trying to create a prison-like system in our school, or that we're using terminology or attitude or to our approach that is all about punitive or lockdown. Instead, it's more about what are we doing to watch out for safety. And the board also asked that we look at things beyond just a single position or idea. So presented, we worked and have met since then, and presented. We are presenting 6 different recommendations that we're asking the board to consider and approve. The first being professional support, that we are coordinating specifically with CharterSafe, which is our insurance, and that came out of a suggestion from last month of let's see what they have involved. It was really a good suggestion, and I frankly feel like it's something we could have done a few months ago and looking at it, because CharterSafe has been fantastic in reaching out and working with us. One of the things that they have done is they've reviewed all the information that I'm sharing with you tonight, and they gave a very strong endorsement to the board that these are the kind of steps that can make a difference. They realize nothing's foolproof, but that anything that's proactive that the board can do to help make the campus a safer place is a positive step, and they do endorse all 6 of the things that are there. We've also gotten on their docket for this spring to do an inspection of our campus that they will do, and have someone walk it and then give us specific suggestions, and we'll make that a part of an annual visit that CharterSafe would coordinate for us. And they would also work with our staff and the guidance through their guidance and the ongoing training that we need for our staff. We do things at staff meetings, but it's mostly looking over procedures and making sure, okay, are we doing this and doing that, or looking over our last drill, okay, what can we do better? And so those are important things, but we also want to get that professional support, and so we think CharterSafe is a good place to start with that, their own resources as well as places they can point us. One of the things that we definitely found is that with our own staff, intercommunication when if power is down or if the internet is down, the best possible way to reach people is what do they have in their hand, and that's their phone. So yeah, and even if local internet wireless is down, people's cell reception will typically work. Now, in an earthquake, for instance, that might be just the opposite, and we would be relying on things like walkie-talkies. But we think that this is the best way in most situations to immediately connect. So we're going to put together a cell phone emergency link. It's probably using WhatsApp. This is a fairly easy step, and we want to put that into place with our staff. We've talked about the upgrade of our Buzzergate video system. That's the one that is installed on the door, and we researched it and tried to get it put in over the summer on our own, and LAUSD said, no, you have to go through us. And we said, okay. And we had said we were willing to pay for it. And they said, nope, that's our cost, but we have to do it ourselves. So we have put in all the paperwork, and that is, we've been approved. We are awaiting that installation. So it's a functional buzzer gate. Recently, we just had the hardware upgraded on the buzzer gate. It broke, and now it's fixed. So got that fairly quick. We had a day and a half down, but the hardware on the buzzer gate is repaired. Now we want to get the upgrade to the system, and the software system, the video system. The final two areas are pretty important. One being most important, that's the last one here. We feel 6, but I want to talk about 5. The idea came out at our one of our meetings is, can't we do something with like a ring system or some type of low cost, low impact video system to be able to watch and monitor in the hallways, the area between the breezeway between the buzzer gate and the office. And the I basically said, okay, well, let me see what I can do, and I gave a direction to our IT department and said, with a limited budget, and I gave them about a $2,500, like, okay, see what you can do with that, to give us a prototype of a system that had to meet specifications. But the number one specification is it couldn't be mounted or a part of LA Unified's system. It has to be something that we can have. We can physically move it. And so the setup for that is going to be that it's a standalone but kind of block with cameras mounted to it, and that we can bring in and out and do a charging each night, and to be able to collect or to have that surveillance through our Wi-Fi system, and to be able to show it where we could see it in our office. And so it's a piece that by itself, it helps. It doesn't solve everything, but it does give us one way of being able to watch and monitor. And the most important piece of this is number 6, which is to add a campus safety monitor position. And there's kind of a couple factors that are big in this. One is what's happening in the world, and knowing that there's been cases at schools and in the general in the world, that it will be helpful to be able to better monitor both visitors and also students while on campus. And as for the student side, I think we're really seeing this with our growth of our middle school. When we started out the first year, we had 23 kids in 6th grade. That wasn't a big shift or change, but now we have almost 100, over 90 kids in the middle school, and we saw that grow with a 6th grade this year, going to 2 classes, and it's typical at the middle school level of having a campus monitor position. And so that's where we're thinking that those two things can be solved through this position. So watching and helping students and getting to class, from class to class, bathroom areas, and all the movement that goes on, as well as being the key person in the place where we need them for making sure visitors are going where they're supposed to be going. So what does this cost? Well, the first 4, it's pretty easy. There are no overhead costs beyond what we already budget for through our administration, through our contract with CharterSafe, or through our oversight with LAUSD. The places where there is cost, we expect it to be a one-time cost. As I said, I told them within my purview, which is up to $5,000. I said, let's see where we're at with 2,500 and see what you can get done to see if we can solve this issue. So I moved forward on that one. And I'm expecting it to be a one-time cost and maybe even come in a little less than that. We'll see, but they're working on that right now. The big thing is this: a campus safety monitor position is, basically at an instructional aid cost for the current year that we're in, because we're already halfway through the year. It's about half the cost. So we're estimating for salary and benefits that it would be $16,000 between now and the end of the year, and that planning in for next year's budget that we would need to budget for $32,000 for this moving forward. The school safety committee looked at these issues, has talked through these issues. We've talked through them administratively, and we think that this really will make a difference in a positive way of keeping our campus feeling safe and secure, or as secure as you can get it, in the situation that we find ourselves. So that is the recommendation that I'm making, is for implementation of these 6 steps at this time, and would love to answer questions. I know we have a couple members of the public here. I'd like to thank them for being here. I know that Jen spoke at the beginning, just indicating her support, and her husband's been on our committee. We also have Rachel Arbing. I think I saw her, and she's been a part of the committee. So thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. So Sam?
Yeah, let's go to questions. I'll start with you, Frank.
Yeah, 2 comments. I endorse everything of this. I think it's a must investment. There's no question for me about this. Regarding item number 5, I, as a certified risk manager, I encourage you to look for a permanently installed solution, and not something which can be, and spend a little bit more money on this one, permanently install it and hardwire it, rather than having a temporary solution which needs to be monitored through human element. And the reason I say that is, what if the human element who is monitoring the system is making a mistake and then there is an incident? So I highly encourage you to look for a permanent solution for this gateway, and spend a little bit more money, and not be too shy on this. Regarding the campus safety monitor person, rather than, it's always the question of make or buy. I've seen a lot of in other schools that there is a security person from an outside service, which have been, they do the vetting, they do all this other kind of stuff. They are trained personnel. Maybe take a look at that rather than hiring it yourself, as you're planning to do in a minimum wage situation. And keep an open mind. So these are the only 2 comments regarding these positions. Thank you.
Thanks, Frank. Pete?
Yeah, so I think in terms of 5, I guess you mentioned like a Ring camera or something. It seems like that's the obvious solution. Not only that, they're solar powered, so you don't need to take them in to charge them. They'll last, well, basically forever. It is Southern California. They have motion sensoring. I mean, I can tell you what's happening in my cabin 500 miles away any instant. So it seems like a pretty simple solution. Now there is a annual fee for that though, so I'm sure you've looked into all of that. I just the solar part I think is a good addition. The bigger issue, not surprisingly, is number 6, and it seems like we have a moving target on what the purpose of this is, because initially it was some safety concerns, but now it turns out that it's also for hallway monitoring and student monitoring, which seems to be an entirely different purpose than safety from unknown elements from the outside. So I don't find a legitimate reason to hire a safety monitor, because presumably we are a school of excellence, or whatever it was called, that can train their students to be courteous and walk through hallways in ways that they should be doing, and all of that sort of thing. So having a separate monitor for that, I think, again, sets a certain type of tone that just isn't conducive for a collegial academic atmosphere. So I would take that out of the equation. Then the question becomes whether or not, in fact, having a security guard, by whatever name you want to give it, has any demonstrable effect on improving the safety of having any kind of incidences from the outside. And I have yet to see that presented, likely because you won't find it. But I think before investing in something that potentially, and I don't even, so I think the other problem, and I hope those people will take this with a grain of salt, is that we have a bit of a selection problem. Like the people who are on security committees are those people who are particularly interested in security. I mean, minimally, I would like to see a larger input from the population as a whole, not just the X number of people who are on the committee whose particular interest that is. So of course, those folks are going to have a particular desire to have this sort of outcome. But I think you can also have the opposite effect. If you have security guards roaming the hallways when you give tours, you're going to present a model that says, this is a school where you can't trust to leave your kids, because at any moment now there's going to be an incident. Either A, because we can't teach them to walk through the hallways properly, or B, because we think that any second now someone's going to break in and commit some sort of a crime. So I don't see it as a positive, and not to mention the other things I talked about last week. So I am in favor of the first 5, but I'm not in favor of number 6 until we have some sort of evidence that suggests or supports this notion that having this person really has an impact on safety. Thanks.
Thanks, Pete. Chris, is there anything you want to respond before I had a question?
Why don't you go ahead and then I'll respond to everybody in general.
Okay. And then I also have a proposal to make. But first, I want to give my thanks, Chris, to you, but also to all of the parents, including Rachel, who's on the call, and Tim, who wasn't here, and Jenny was speaking here before, but to all the parents who have come together and dedicated their time to this question. It was impressive to hear them speak last meeting. I really appreciated the time that they took to come talk to us. And I really appreciate the time in making these recommendations. And I also appreciate, Chris, the fact that it looks like you guys have gone out, solicited some external resources and, taken advantage of things. It seems like it's already there. And I look forward to seeing the results of the inspections and all that would come out of the approval of this. I do think in terms of the campus safety monitor position, I'm in favor of all the recommendations. But in terms of the campus safety monitor position, I think, we heard from Frank, is this something we can outsource to bring in a different skill set? And then from Pete, I think there are probably multiple things. I'm not trying to put any words in Pete's mouth, but, there would be a difference in perception if this was handled likely by a uniformed position as opposed to a plainclothes position about, what's being demonstrated to those who are coming in. I don't really have a position either way, but I could see, different ways that could be handled. And maybe, you can do some exploration with how that's rolled out if we approve this today. But also one of the things that I noted when I was looking at the background materials that were presented, there was a buzzer gate protocol that was put in place, or that's also in that packet to show us how that would work. But I didn't see any special call in for how that new role would fit into that process. And, given that, the students are kind of on a spread out portion of campus, right? We go from where the younger students are into the other portion of the campus, clearly the person can't be everywhere at once. Is there going to be a specific role of, if there is a ring at the buzzer, is that kind of the immediate call for that person to come and start, escorting and making sure the protocols are followed? That would be something I'd hope could get built into that a bit. But then with the proposal, one of the things I'd like to explore with the board is, Pete, if you're not prepared to accept the 6th recommendation, I'd like to almost separate them and move 1 through 5, and then have a separate vote on 6, so that we could really show a level of support for the recommendations as they're taken, because I do hear consensus around 1 through 5 among all 3 of us who are here today to vote. With that, Chris, let me turn it to you.
Sure. Thanks. And I appreciate the comments all around, because I know this is the great unsolvable issue. Yet we're putting this forward as a way to try to take a step towards solving the unsolvable. A couple of pieces that were mentioned by Frank relates to is this something we're talking about number 6? Is this something that would be best suited as an internal person or as an external, an outside outsourced group? And I'm going to rely a little bit on my experience with this, in that in a previous place we involved outside security, and it can be much more I don't know how to say it, uniformed and very strict in protocol, and they're kind of dealing with their security way of doing things. And I'm appreciative of what I think Pete is trying to express, is that you don't want to have this sense of we're in a state of surveillance by a person who is set up to be there. I see this person as a greeter, and it goes to the question that Sam put: is that their number one job? And I'd say yes, it definitely is their number one job, and we can clarify that more in the job description that we would put out. But I see this person as wearing a Goethe jacket, not any kind of more than more security-fied than that. They would be outside, so they would definitely need to be wearing a jacket on almost all days. Very specifically, the area that they would be watching over is the crossroads between the buzzer gate to the office and where it crosses to the attendants and where the bathrooms are. It's having someone there all the time. They have line of sight from that position all the way to middle school. So that's where the question of middle school students, and when they do pass between there and PE and that kind of thing, that this person could definitely be multitasking, but in that spot, so that their primary job being making sure that visitors are welcomed and directed to where they're supposed to go, and ensuring that they in fact go to the place that they're supposed to go, and if to get their visitor sticker, and if they ever see someone without a visitor sticker, they're quite saying, "Oh, have you been to the office? Let me direct you." And so it's that type of approach, not a gotcha or just trying to make it feel un-Goethe-like. We want to keep the feel of our campus, which is positive and interactive, and talking with adults and talking with kids, and being very approachable. That's what we would expect out of this person. And for that reason, I think we would be better off having this position be an in-house position, that we have that control over and can have the nuance about what we want our message to be. The other thing I would suggest is that is to try this out and see how it goes on a singular basis between now and the end of the year, and not commit to next year, and just say, okay, this would be something that would be now, and then we'd look at it at the end of the year and see how it's actually playing out. But the part that I do think makes a difference, and that you mentioned, Pete, is would this have any effect at all? And I think it does. I think it allows us to have eyes and ears in a place that it's the dead zone. We don't have line of sight. They did not create the campus to have an entryway where the entryway is. It was the back end of campus, and that's what we got. So that's what we make use of. I don't think it's been as big of an issue because we haven't had middle school kids up until this point on any great numbers, and that has an effect on where kids are going and what they're doing, and the way we make sure that kids are following what we're expecting of them is we need to have some level of accountability, and extra eyes watching would make a difference. The video system to some degree, but they have limitations. But I think that the real key here is a safety monitor position, and I do believe it would make a difference in how we feel trying to run the school and keep things going. And as we're trying to bring more parents back to campus, as COVID things lift, it will give us a chance to be certain we can deal with this number one issue, and that would be the primary work of this position, would be the welcomer and making sure that people are getting to where they're supposed to be as they visit the campus.
Thanks, Chris. So Pete, I have a question for you. Would you be willing to support number 6 if it was on a trial basis through the end of this year? And then we can revisit this during the budget discussions for the next year, while we're discussing budgeting for this position, and also asking Chris for some feedback as to how the position went?
That's a good idea. The one big caveat is I'd like to see how it is you'd know that it went well or not well. So I don't want to hear 6 months from now, well, we had this person there and it went really well, because that's not an objective evaluation of whether there was any kind of substantive impact to having an additional person there. So I can agree to having a trial basis. I think that's a great idea, but that has to come with some sort of set of specific criteria that either were accomplished or weren't.
And I'm happy to commit to that. I think it's not, it won't be easy because we don't have pre-data to look at. The key thing, I think, is collecting how many people are coming on campus each day. We have some things to look at from the logs that we have, but I think the main thing is how many adults are walking around without visitor passes. That would be my first indication of, is it working or not working? And things have gotten better because we've made this a major point in the past month or two, but that spike will go down if we don't have ongoing. But I think that's kind of one of the things I would try to quantify is how many visitors are coming, and then how many are we finding without passes, and then maybe delineating, of those ones we found without passes, were they lost or were they subverting what were, they just went where they wanted because that's what they wanted to do. And I think that's the important piece that we're trying to get past, is that someone can't just walk and go to a classroom. We don't know who they are or what they're doing.
Thanks, Chris. So in terms of a motion, it sounds like we could actually move all all 6 of these recommendations together. But with a note that the approval as it relates to recommendation 6 is on a trial period for the remainder of the school year. And Chris, that you and your team will propose some meaningful metrics against which you will report to us so that we can evaluate during the next budget cycle, whether to retain this position in this form or a different form or
Yeah.
not at all.
That seems fair to me.
Great. So I'm happy to move that motion. Is there someone who'd like to second it?
I can. I do.
Great. Thanks, Frank. I will,
Are we moving a different thing now? Because
so
we
we're-
already had moved it. before.
that's right. Thanks, Biggie. Because we're kind of amending a bit. We're
That's
adding
why
some
I'm asking, is
specification.
it a different?
As amended.
motion As amended?
As
with the
amended.
amendment, or can the people stay on the minutes that moved before?
As long, I believe that both, I forget who first, who made the motion initially and then seconded it. If you can remind us, Biggie.
It was Frank moving and you seconding.
Okay, well, I accept the amendment that I made. Frank, do you accept that as the initial mover?
Yes, I do.
All right, so as amended, I will go ahead and take a motion, or we'll take a vote. Frank,
Aye.
Pete,
Yes.
and I approve as well. So again, thanks to Chris and the parent committee for all their work on that.
Right. Thank you for your trust in that, and we will bring you back more information as we head into budget season, probably in May.
Sounds good. So now let's move to the next item on the agenda, the approval of the arts, music, and instructional materials block grant plan. Chris?
Sure. This came up earlier in the meeting because this is one of the things that the governor says he may reduce a little bit of the money that's come in. But let's take a look at it. This is a grant that had a template that we needed to use. We worked with Anjanette, who works with our LCAP, and she helped with this piece as well. It basically has a bunch of different areas in which you can spend, and this grant does not have a supplement versus supplant issue, which means we can take things that we're doing that we're happy with and we can keep them going, or we can expand them, or we can do whatever we basically want with this money. This is a program that you can use for arts, for music, any kind of instructional materials as well. So one of they list 5 different areas that you can spend money in. In larger districts, they say, you know, if you can balance them out, that's great, but there's no requirement of balancing that out. Ours are all listed down here at the bottom, which is across 2 budget years. And I mention that because in looking at next year, we may have to make an adjustment on this if the January proposal comes through in May and June. But basically, there's 2 things that we do with art that have been an important part of our program, and we've actually expanded them just recently. When we had initially an art teacher, it was a K-5 art teacher. We found the need to move into the middle school and make that person a part of our program, and we also augment that with some exploratory programs as well through PS Arts. We also, so that is listed here as salary for credentialed art teacher grades 3 through 8, and this is a salary and benefits costs that is a projection. We also added through PS Arts a K2 instruction in art, and that started last year. And so this gives us a means of funding that. So this is a program that we do through PS Arts. It is not a full-time program, but it does allow us to give arts instruction through our K2, and it's been very well received. So we're proposing that we use this money to fund these two programs. This year, it would be about 128,000. I'm using rough numbers here, which was recommended for this budget, not to have specificity down to the dollar. And then in the second year, we would be able to there's basically a step and column increase that would be shown here. And then we would not have enough to do the complete amount, which we would need to look at. Do we reduce that next year, or do we find another funding source to keep this going? Considering this is all basically money to the good, because it's one-time money that we can use that was given to us in this budget, and we can use it across multiple years. This is how we're suggesting we're using this. The arts money is basically the funding that we looked at, that we wanted to, the one-time funding that we wanted to spend first. And then there is some recovery money. That was that larger amount that I said. We were looking at that in the out years, so that we have multiple years to be helped out in our budget, in our efforts to help students recover from the the effects of being home or learning at home, and all that we did during the pandemic. We're trying to come out of that, and arts, we feel, is really at the heart of what makes kids often want to come to school, and often feel a connection, and they really, that's something that they look forward to. It's been a part of our program, and we've expanded it, and this is going to be a means by which we can do that. So the overall, as we said, the sections that are there, this is just the totals, and I'm recommending that we follow through on this. Again, this is a plan that we will keep on file, and if we have to make any changes, if the money goes down, we'll adjust there, but let's wait until we see what really does happen in the May revise and potentially the June budget. So I am recommending that we move forward with this plan. And any questions?
So before we move forward with the board discussion on this, let me call for someone to move the approval. I skipped that part earlier. Sorry about that.
I think I jumped right in.
I'll move.
Thanks, Pete. Second? I can second. All right, so Frank, any questions here?
Can you go back to the page here? And I'm trying to bring this up on my iPad here.
That
Now,
we were just looking at?
Yeah, it's the budget. So we do have a credentialed art teacher, and we have the arts program for this year. So that's already sunk cost, the 128.
Right. And we put these into the budget when we budgeted back in June.
Yeah.
That's how, because we knew this money was coming. That's how we
Okay.
budgeted, is exactly like this.
And we do have a person as an art teacher.
Yes.
Sorry. Okay, good. And that would be an extension for next year.
Yes.
And a potential takedown of the current program for K2. Okay. Well, these are my only questions. Okay.
Pete?
Thank you.
Thanks, Frank. Pete?
Well, I had some snarky remarks to tie to the last discussion, but I'm gonna hold those and have no questions. Thanks.
Thanks, Pete. I can imagine what some of those are. But I do have a question, Chris. So when we're looking at this, so the cost for art instructor for grades K through 12 or K through 2,
Mhm.
and the budgeted for 2023-24, that's really stating the budget for the use of these funds, or is that stating the
Correct.
full potential budget that we could allocate from other resources?
That is just related from this funding source. So we could choose to find another funding source. For instance, the Prop 28 money that is specific to art and music that will come in would probably easily cover the remaining part if you wanted to keep this one intact as it is.
And then a separate question, not necessarily about the funds here, but are there plans for any addition of music programming within the school?
Not currently, but that would be a great thing that we could move forward with, possibly with, in conjunction with either that other funding source with music. Yeah, I'd love to see it. We don't have a current plan, and the biggest issue with it is it within the regular day? How do we fit it in? Because we are so overly impacted within our regular day. And maybe the answer is a combination. We could also provide some things through the ELOP program. So that's another option of where to bring music in.
Great, thanks. So with that, let's call for a vote. Frank,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
and I approve as well. So you're clear to move forward with that.
Okay.
Let's move to the next item on our agenda, item E, the approval of the Los Angeles Public Charter School Collaborative Partner Agreement. Do any of my fellow board members move this item?
I move.
Thanks,
I'll
Frank.
second.
Pete seconds. All right, over to you, Chris.
Sure. I put the details into the Dropbox folders about this group, but I want to just share the big picture. This is a new collaborative of LA public charter schools that are small in nature. They have they're not a part of a big CMO. They're obviously not a part of a district, and we're often left off the table of like the big picture of getting our names out there. And back in when the pandemic was just starting, there was a group of executive directors that began meeting weekly to try to keep up with what was happening. And I was a part of that. And it has maintained, we found it so useful because there's so many things that people were having issues, and it might be this week it's on Prop 39 and facilities, and next week it's on what do you do with in this situation with staff, or what do you do with that? It's all various ways in which we're looking at policies and best practices, and charter renewals coming up, and how we deal with staff compensation, and all the different things that happen. So this group had got together and had been working together and wanted to create a more formal structure, and particularly for outreach. We felt that there was an opportunity to get our names out there, not as in competition with one another, although there's somewhat of that, but the group is kind of far flung, a lot in the Valley and a lot in the West Side and Hollywood areas. So it has a whole number of folks involved, and we wanted to develop a shared messaging and promotion. And I mentioned this a couple months ago, I think in November, that this was something we were looking into. And I think we talked about what were the costs on this. And to jog your memory, Frank said we'd said there was an initial $10,000 cost, and Frank thought $10,000, what in the world? That was a shared cost. So there's two proposals basically that we're looking at for this, and I put those into the Dropbox. But the cost is shared amongst the 18 members of this group. And I can bring up kind of who is in the group. So our expected cost, it's approximately $750, I think, to do phase 1 and 2, and that's offset because phase 2 is actually we got a $10,000 donation, so we only have to deal with things that are beyond the cost of that $10,000 for phase 2. So we're kind of in it for phase 1 and any additional costs of phase 2. But the real benefit here is that we have ways of connecting with other charter schools beyond just CCSA, which is looking across the entire state, and they're very much involved in larger issues than maybe some of the smaller schools might have. And so this is in addition to CCSA. We think this is going to be a real help to be a part of this group. And just to share what this is the agreement that I intend to sign tomorrow. But this is the group of schools that are there, and so you can see what one of the other schools that was listed as a distinguished school, Larchmont Charter, is also on there. But you can see some of these are in the Valley, and some of them are locally. We have Wish as a part of this, and it's been really helpful to have a kind of a neighbor executive director I've been able to talk to and be share information with, and the specific goals that we have as a group. I'm not going to go into all of these, but idea that it's not just making it up as we go along. And the group that in particular, Multicultural Learning Center is agreed to be, and Gail Nadler agreed to be the fiscal agent for the group. And so that's who we'll be working with as we pay invoices and things like that. They'll be sending them to us. So with that, I would ask the board to give approval that we move forward with being a part of the LA Public Charter School Collaborative.
Thanks, Chris. Frank, starting with you, any questions, comments?
I'm not concerned about the dollar amount any longer. This group, I'm on their website here. They're a marketing agency with the mission. The Momentum's solution is,
they're the marketing agency that this group is working with to get our message out.
Right. And what's the scope of work they're doing here again for us? Can you just
Sure.
Curious just to what the scope is actually, what we're getting there for.
In the Dropbox, it has
phase 1 and 2.
So it gives you the specifics of the scope of work here.
And so they are rebranding not our school, but they're branding they're branding this collaborative.
Exactly.
Okay, and so they give this collaborative a website and whatnot, and that kind of thing, right?
Exactly. The website is brand new. It's just getting ready. It exists, but it hasn't been pushed out or made public. That's that's phase 1.
That's phase 1. So it's all online communication, blah, blah, blah. And then the phase 2 is, again, because I didn't get this.
Yeah, let's see.
Phase 1 is covered by the grant.
No, phase 2 is covered by the grant. They said we want you guys to commit to phase 1 on your own, and then we'll come in on phase 2.
Okay, so they raised the money. Okay.
Yeah, and the group that did it was Great Public Schools Now.
Yeah,
that's who gave us the 10,000.
Okay.
And they're a charter supporter.
Okay, I got it. Okay, yeah, I'm okay with it. Thank you.
Cool.
Great, thanks. Pete, any questions?
Just the usual, just to beat the same drum again. I realize it's only $750 at this point, but there's time and effort involved as well. And I guess, is there some criteria by which next year you can say this is a great collaborative to be a part of because it's really done X for us? Or is it, well, we got a website up? So I just like to see some monitoring as we enter into all these different programs, that there's some thought about why we're entering into these programs and then how we measure that we accomplish what the why is. So I don't know if that's explicit or should be made explicit. Well, I think it should be made explicit so that we can keep tapping into, and potentially being a member is a good thing. But by monitoring what we're trying to get out of it, we can push it in the direction that we want it to go. But if we don't have any goals that we're monitoring, then we're just blindly, swinging in the wind and giving $750 a year or whatever it is. So again, I just want to see some criteria with which we monitor our participation.
Yeah, I could definitely give you, an update when it comes time to renewal. And anything beyond this should come back that way, and it would be, I think, a part of our annual renewals. But I don't know how, I think it depends on what a phase 3 in the future would look like. And I'm not sure, whether it's something we would definitely want to be a part of, or even if the collaborative knows what step 3 is. The idea was, hey, we're already doing this in meeting. Let's formalize it and give us some structure, and at the same time get the message out that these schools exist and that helps our enrollment drive. So I think we can see if this is something that if they have an event or some of the whether it was website or whatever it might be, does that translate into people showing interest? And we have ways to gather that. One of the questions we have of folks coming in is, where did you hear about us?
Thanks, Chris. So 2 questions. The one I'm going to ask, has legal reviewed your MOU? Are they clear for you to sign that?
I have not shared that. I will be happy to do that before I sign.
Yeah, I think it just make sure from the collaborative aspect that it's all good from the legal side. And then, I think I'm going to channel Katrin here a little bit and suggest that, if there are any metrics that you might be able to come up with, particularly as it relates to marketing or, ways to even help them give or to ask them to give you click-through metrics or anything from how many people are clicking on Go to Pages. Let's see if it starts translating into increased, tours or, however we could link through that, see if it really increases our visibility and attraction to the school. Those would be great things to understand for the future. So no other questions on that from me. Let's move to a vote. Frank?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
And I approve as well. So let's move forward to the last item on our main agenda, the approval of the school accountability report card. Chris?
Okay. This is
Vote motion. I move.
Thank you. Sorry about that, Frank.
Yeah.
I'll
Or
second.
work with, we do it on the other side. So sorry, I always forget. So
Yeah.
Frank moves. Do I have a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Great. Thanks, Pete. Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you. And I can give a little bit of timing so that you can fit those things in. So school accountability report card is a document that is required every year. For those who've been on the board a while, you've seen this every year. It is it happens right at this time. We have to post it on our website by February 1st. And the document, I want to thank Casey for, she's been putting this together for many years, and we have to wait for the template to come out from the state, and a lot of the information actually is filled into the template. A lot of the data is filled in. It's got a lot of test score stuff, and it's broken out in maybe a little different way than other things that we've already shared, but it's the same data, just broken out that way. It also has various explanations of things that we do, and all these are responses to what has been put over the many years into this requirements of the school accountability report card. Its purpose is transparency. The problem is that it is a little outdated. They also have a California dashboard, and they also have a lot of other documents that are required, but this one's been around for a long time, and it is continuing. It'll probably continue to be around for a long time. But it's like about a 30-page document, and has a lot of information. I shared this in your Dropbox, to fill us in of the work that she did, I'll let Casey share for just a couple of minutes, and then answer any questions if there are any. Casey?
Thank you, Chris. So as Chris said, it goes over every component that you could possibly want to know about a school. And so it covers everything from like our enrollment to the school description, mission and vision. It's got information about teachers, placements, credentialing. It's got fiscal information in there, so expenditures, information about our textbooks that we're using, the condition of the facilities, the support staff that are on campus. And I won't go into all the little pieces because it's all there in that large document. Just a few things to note, as Chris mentioned, most of the data is auto-populated because we have to submit through a variety of other reports the data as we go throughout the year. So almost all of the data in this SARC will be for the last school year, so 2021-22, but then there are some descriptions that ask for us to share specifically about this year. Those are more so of the narrative pieces that are in there. There are a few things to note as you go through. There might be some empty spaces or spaces where we've put in NA. The NA spaces, mostly those are for high schools. And so there's like CTE, which is your career technical education, UC, which is your university courses. So those types of things do not apply to our school. So we'll put an NA, or those will remain blank. There's also, when you look at the teacher credentialing placement section, you'll see that it is blank for the 2021-22 school year, but it will have some information from the 2020-21 school year. That data will be populated by CalSAS, which is the California Assignment Monitoring System that we go through. But we just submitted all of that this first semester of the year. So it's not quite ready to be populated in there, but it will be done through CalSAS. That will auto-populate.
We've done our part. We're waiting for them to do their part.
Exactly. And then the expenditures piece that talks about finances and what we've spent. The data for this year, you'll notice, is empty, but we received that data today. And so I will be putting that in this evening so that we can have the fully completed document. The expenditures portion is the only piece that I need to update for this to be final. That CalSAS piece will come on its own. And I think those are kind of the main updates. So I'll open if there are any questions about, oh.
You're so easy.
If there are any questions.
Thanks, Casey. Frank, starting with
Nope.
you, any questions?
Nope.
Pete?
Not for me, thanks.
And none from me either. So let's go to a vote on this. Frank? Frank, if you're voting,
Yes.
thank
Yes.
you. Pete?
Yes.
And I approve as well. So thanks for all the effort in putting that together, Casey. It looks like a big endeavor. So let's move to the next item on our agenda. We're moving to the new business section. Next steps and follow-up meeting times, discussing logistics of expected return to in-person board meetings beginning in March. Chris.
Okay, I just wanted to take a moment to kind of think through how things might need to be different, assuming the governor rescinds the emergency order. And what that would mean is we'd be going back to the Brown Act rules that existed prior to the pandemic. And which means we would need to be meeting in person at the school. There are options for joining virtually. but there are requirements that go along with that. In particular, it means that you need to be speaking from a place where the public can join you, and that both you as the board member and any member of the public who so desires can see and participate in, sharing public comment, that kind of thing. So if we are in fact back to those rules beginning March, the March meeting, we would likely be holding on campus. And so, which we used to do in room 45, that's no longer an option because room 45 is a special education room now, for the half of the room, and the other half is the teacher workroom. And so there's no ability for us to set it up as a board meeting. So we'd go back to the old days, which would be we'll select a classroom and set it up accordingly. I think would be the likely way we would do it. And the important part is, if we're going to, now that we have Zoom available, it would be Zoom, I think, that we would use in case there were someone joining us from virtually, but we'll have to have a computer that is designated for that, so that person can join us at the table and be able to do that. I think one of the issues that we'll need to think through between now and February 13th, which is our next meeting, is and I don't know the answer to this, where Yasir stands on, is he going to be able to come to 2 meetings each month? Initially, he had said that would be doable. I don't know where he stands now. If that's the case, it would be a difficulty, I think, being the chair and running the agenda from that purpose in the long term, if he's coming in remotely. That also has an effect on our ability to get a quorum, because you need to be within the jurisdiction to count for a quorum. And I'm going to double check. I didn't have a chance to do that, Frank. I'm going to double check about what it means for whether the quorum extends only to those that are in person or within the jurisdiction, which is shown as basically LA County for us. So I've got to get clarification on that. But I wanted to open it up to the board and say, are there any thoughts or things moving forward that we need to think about from our end on logistics?
Thanks, Chris. I remember from the Brown Act training that it seemed like there are a few really specific requirements that had to be met in order for the person who's attending remotely and to be able to count for quorum. So it might be good to revisit that training from what YMC presented. So I guess, one thing that's tangentially related to this for me is really discussing adding to the board. I know it's been kind of a perennial topic, but we haven't really devoted much energy to it in the past couple of years because we've been focusing on everything else. But I think it's really important to think about the size of the board, not just from the skill sets, but also from a quorum achievable perspective. I know, I believe that there's, one of the scheduled meetings that would be coming up in April that I'm already expected to be out of the state for, and, so if I can Zoom in, that's great, but I likely wouldn't count for quorum. And we have had some issues hitting quorum as well. So I think we need to pay some really close attention to that coming back. Frank?
What an antiquated form to conduct meetings in person, it's so I don't gain the the 4-hour commute back and forth to school, so I would then if that really becomes again the standard operating procedure to meet every meet in school in person, you know, we need to also think about not only about quorum, but about like meeting frequency. You know, does it really require to meet every month then, right? If it is in person, you know, can we get away in this situation with less, because you have ample authority to do all these things. And, you know, while I appreciate that you're bringing back the discussion, you know, about, because I raised the question about the $10,000, what is it for? And, you know, maybe we don't have to belabor an issue then for $750, right? And it can be gone in some executive report or an executive reporting out there. And if it's really the case that we need to meet in person. So think through that. We need to think through this, what it means for quorum, attendance, you know, and time spent, you know, to get back and forth to the meeting. That's all.
Pete?
Well, I certainly agree with those comments, and the only potential, not potential, the only issue I have is that uncontrollable by me, I have a class that goes from 4 to 6, which is at Northridge. So it would be somewhat difficult to make it in person, although, you know, I could Zoom in from my classroom, which has plenty of public access, so that part could be met pretty easily. The in-person part would be difficult, at least for this for the foreseeable future.
And Chris, one other question that I have is, does this count for the meetings of all the committees of the board as well, not just for the board meeting?
It would formal meetings. So we'd have to think through, you know, Frank sits on the finance committee. Probably we could do that remotely with him. But we'd have to be sure we have quorum with the other members.
Right. So for those, then we also have to make sure that the communities or the parent community who's sitting on those committees is also aware and able to attend.
Yeah.
Lots to think about. So is there any concrete action item out of this, or is this continuing the discussion?
Yeah, I think we can just put it in the same spot next month and continue the discussion. I think it's important to have you see her for that one, and we'll see, and and hopefully Catherine will be able to be here next month too. I'll talk with her about that, and that we can get a plan formulated.
Great. Anything else to raise under this, Chris?
Nope, not for me.
Frank, any other items to raise under new business?
Nope.
Pete?
Nope.
All right, well, we are skipping all the items related to the closed session on the agenda.
Yep.
So we're moving to adjournment. I move to adjourn. Do we have a second?
No, second.
All right, let's take a vote. Frank?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
And I agree as well. So we're calling the meeting to a close at 8:27.